Hello, my name is Aaron White.
My native name is Dal Wilma Samogat Laha, and my second is Skalach. So translating into English means the first one is angel, and the second one is one who lies in front of the den.
Wow. That's a way cooler name than mine. My name means tall mountain, which I'm sitting on a low thing right now, but I am quite tall.
So eye level.
We're a little bit balanced out. We thought, as we were talking about communication, that it would be a good idea to have a conversation and to talk about what it means to listen to one another. Because a lot of times we think of communication as the thing that we put out there, but actually the starting point of communication is really how we listen to, how we attend to one another. And we've not always been that great in the Christian church, certainly in the West, at listening to people. So I thought it'd be really helpful to have a conversation. I've known you as Joyce for a number of years. I don't know how well I can pronounce your new name. I will work on it, I promise. But Joyce has been teaching me for the last several years, and we've just been friends for the last several years, and hopefully teaching each other in a mutual relationship here in the downtown east side of Vancouver. I'm here with my family. I live here. I've been living here for the last 16 years, partly because my grandmother used to be in this neighborhood working with people in prison. That's kind of how I like to introduce myself to groups. How do you introduce yourself?
Normally, especially with other First Nations people, we tell each other where we're from. So our names, where we're from. So I'm Gitxsan, and I come from the house of Wilps Malulak, and that is in the Gitxsan area, so which is northern BC. And my dad is in Kitsikukla, and his mom is also from there. And then my mom is Judy, and her mom is Louise. Her mom is Esther. So we would normally go by 5 generations. So myself, my mom, right? So 5 generations. And that just shows to where we're from. But we all go by our mom's side, mainly. With our dad, we normally go back a couple of generations just to show how far our family line comes from. Yeah.
I love that, and one of the things that I've learned being in the downtown east side for the last 16 years is when I'm introduced to people, mostly to Native people, it takes a long time to get, to be introduced, because there's a lot of this is where I'm from, and here's my relation, and this is my cousin, and this is my auntie, and I've learned a little bit about that, and then I watch kind of other white folk getting introduced, and you can sort of feel them getting impatient, like, let's get to the stuff, right? Yeah. And I'm like, no, you're missing it. This is the stuff. Yeah. Because you're learning about who this person is.
The character, because where we grow up, like I said, with our mom's side of the family, that's who we would follow. So the characteristics of the generations shows. Yeah. And it also gives us an opportunity as well to prove who we are as we stand. Sometimes try to break away at times, but we will always have those characteristics that come and follow. And same with our dad's side as well, just so that people have that general idea of who we are. And I remember when I first, when my uncle knew I was going to be moving down here, I didn't know. I knew I was going to be stationed down here, and I thought for a little while, but that's not, I'm following God's will. But he said that, remember where you come from. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, no, remember where you come from. Yeah. Yeah. And, you're representing us as Gitxsan people. And I was like, oh, that I'm like, Uncle, you're not helping, because I tried to break away. He's like, no, that's not how it works.
You don't get to do that.
No.
But it's so, I mean, that is so helpful, because the way that in our culture now, in our sort of Western culture, that we tend to introduce ourselves is, you know, this is my job, this is my title, this is my salary, you know, this is maybe my hobbies, but we don't, you know, we very rarely even know our third generation, like where we're from, you know, we're very displaced. And so, you know, when we meet someone, we're almost like trading business cards. We're like, who's got the better business card? You know, who wins this transaction a little bit. But the way that you're describing it is actually a far more biblical way of introduction. Because when people are introduced in the story of Scripture, often you get their lineage. You know,
And
this
tribe,
their tribe. This is their tribe. This is where they're from.
Yeah.
This is their mother and their father, and this is, you know, all the way back, including Jesus. The first thing we read about him in 2 of the Gospels is his lineage. You know, and which is fascinating, and you know, we skip it a lot of times.
Yeah,
Right?
no, just like when I first seen that, and I was like, wait, what? He's talking about tribe, he's talking about clan, he's talking about area, he's talking about family. This is what, I was just like, wait, this cannot be in the Bible, like, because we've been taught different.
Right.
And so when I came across that, I was just shocked.
So what you just said is so important. That the way that the Bible is presented is actually is a tribal people.
Yeah.
Right? Writing tribal history.
Yeah.
Which should make all kinds of sense to First Nations people. Like, it should connect so beautifully, but the way that a lot of missionaries and churches chose to communicate, totally different.
Yes. So the way we've been taught about the Bible, about who Jesus and God is, unfortunately has not always been the best. And unfortunately it does go way back, and it has been twisted in such a way that a lot of us right now, we feel like, and what I mean by us is I've noticed a lot of white people, when they're talking, they ask, well, what's going on with your community? Like, how come your people aren't coming? And I kind of look and like, if you knew the history, you wouldn't be asking that question. But sometimes I feel like the government has just pushed that aside and not have allowed us to come like this and communicate this important fact of Canadian history. So the representation of who God is so distorted and miscommunicated that a lot of us don't want to follow, you know, and when I follow God, follow who Jesus is. And I know when I came to Christ that some of my family, and I mean my aunts and uncles who actually went to residential school, had asked me why.
Yeah, because it's been such a brutal history, such a why wouldn't they come to church? Well, I mean, that if you learn just even a little bit about it, you can totally understand it. In fact, I'm always just blown away and blessed when I see people who are still, like, you know, following Jesus, even though he's been so poorly represented. You know, so poorly communicated. I'm so blessed. So, I mean, part of the question that I have is, what do we do about that? How do we change that? Because my contention is that, and I was praying and asking God, what's the future of the church in Canada? And one of the big things I heard is, look to the First Nations believers. You know, look to the First Nations. That's where the church is. So how do we make sure that we hear well? How do we make sure that we work together, like, with such a history fraught with problems?
Yeah, I really believe that the listening, the communication, and how we're able to come together is that place of understanding. So keeping almost like like waiting patiently, because we want to be able to convey ourselves and not misrepresent who we are or what we're saying that might lead you the wrong way, because that is not our intent. Our intent is always to come together and have that relationship, and not have dispute, because it's never good. It's never gonna bring us together. It's never gonna bring our families together. It's not going to bring us that peace. So it kind of like it goes bigger. So if we have a better impact, that's why I was saying that, with my uncle, with my BE, when he said, no, that's not how it works. You are going to be representing Gitxsan people for those people that do not know who we are yet. So that communication of being able to, like, oh, okay, I need to be that person who I was taught to be respectful, to be able to come to that place of understanding. And as you have already mentioned, our introduction, and yes, they fidget. I was like, come on, like this, I'm telling you my history, I'm telling you where I come from, I'm telling you how we are and who we are as a people, and that we want to welcome, that's part of who we are, is being able to say, hey, you know what, we could get along.
Yeah. And I've learned to, and had to learn, I had to kind of lay stuff down in myself. A beautiful thing that I have learned from my many kind of First Nations relations is that things take time.
Yeah.
Like, nothing happens quickly.
No.
And that's actually a really good thing. People get really frustrated, but we've kind of set up our lives to be extraordinarily efficient.
Yeah.
Like, we've got to get things done, and we don't actually usually look for consensus. We look for majority. We vote. Who's got, okay, it's 5 against 3. Okay, we're going to do it. That doesn't seem to be the way that Native communities do it. There's not often somebody up the front telling everybody what to do. It's a circle where everybody's talking.
Yes.
And if you don't come to a conclusion, well, we'll do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's my impression. And again, that seems far more biblical than the efficient thing that we've set up.
Yeah, and I've been on some negotiations, and I've seen the frustration, and I'm like, well, if you want that harmony, if we want to be able to come together, we definitely need patience, and we need to come to that place of, okay, where are you coming from? If I don't understand where you're coming from, how can you understand where I'm coming from? Because your agenda is on the forefront, and that's not going to help us in the long run.
Right.
To continue to have that peace, that harmony for a longer term, rather than just for this moment.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's not about the immediate decision. It's about how do we work together over the next several generations, which we haven't thought about. That's not been on our heart for sure. I think that's so important to hear. Because it does talk about, it's not how do you just communicate in the moment. It's how do we become people who communicate well with one another. Like, how do we build in that process of doing that?
Yeah.
So key. I mean, we could talk about time, and we have 20 minutes, and but I think we should do a bunch of these actually, because I'm learning lots. One thing that struck me is, and I talked to you a bit about this before, the way even that we read Scripture, the lenses that we bring to Scripture kind of come from our cultural and our personal backgrounds, right? So, like, there's a Scripture passage I love very much. It's in Matthew 15. It's when Jesus has just had some conflict with the religious leaders. And it says he goes then to the region of Tyre and Sidon, which is away, it's in an unclean place. And he encounters this Canaanite woman there. This is in Matthew 15. And she has an issue. She sees him, she's known something about him, and she starts asking for a miracle because her daughter is sick and has got a demon. And Jesus' disciples want nothing to do with her. They're like, get rid of her, she's annoying. They got no time for her. Jesus himself doesn't really talk to her, and he even sort of feels like he's offensive towards her. But she keeps on persisting. She doesn't give up. Now, I know from, when I grew up, a lot of people wouldn't even address that story because it makes Jesus look weird. How do you communicate that? Well, again, it didn't make any sense in our culture. It just makes Jesus look rude. So how would you kind of receive that story? Like, how does that feel different from your background?
I come from it at the angle of faith and standing, no matter what the circumstances look like, I'm standing in faith knowing he will do it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Because we often center just Jesus in that story from our perspective. And we just think, oh, he's just testing her. But Jesus actually centers her in the story and look at her faith.
Yeah.
This faith is amazing.
Yeah, because whatever's coming against, right, where we've had opposition, where we've had doubt, where we've had other people try to push and try to stay away, it's just like, no, I'm going to continue standing in faith knowing that he can do it.
Wow. So yeah, people who've known obstacles, they've known it when people say, oh, stop this woman from talking, she's annoying, get rid of her, keep her away from the table, all that stuff.
Negativity.
All that negativity. But you can speak to that, and this is key. You can actually speak to that with an authority that I can't speak to. You can. And you can communicate with that with it. I can say, this is what my friend Joyce says. I can say that. But you can say it straight, this is what I know.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that the church so desperately needs one another. We need to hear from one another, and we need to say, like, I need to say, I should stop talking and hear from somebody else, so important. What is this, as we finish up here, what's a couple suggestions of ways that I can do that better? Like, where I can hear you better, or listen to you better?
Get rid of your expectations.
All right, go on.
Because I feel like there's an agenda, and when you have an agenda, there's certain expectations that come with that, and that hinders, like, oh, okay, I'm not going to get to that one. But if you don't get to that one, it may be the wrong timing. So the expectation, the agenda may be flipped in a different way. And I just feel like that's such a downer for us, because there's no chance for me to come to you and ask for clarification. So if I don't understand something, then I don't even have a chance with your agenda to even ask a question.
Right.
And if I do ask a question, it might be the wrong one that you're thinking. So I feel like there's an expectation that comes along with, with how the agenda should go.
Right.
And I feel like that with, like, being here in Vancouver, oh my gosh, like, yeah, it's all about the agenda. How much can I get done? How much, like, I just need to get this done, and, we're good. It's like, okay, yeah, the task is done, the work is done, but where does that leave us?
Right. What happened to the relationship?
Yeah, it's for this moment, and, it's okay. But if you want a longer relationship, a longer, you want the ongoing, there are things that are going to come up that will hinder us in that way. So being able to sit without the agenda, to sit without the expectation, not to set, like high or low expectation, just no expectation, because it varies. To me, it varies in different ways. So for me, the perspective as you as a white person, knowing that you're going to talk about your work, to me I know that's your thing.
Sure.
For me, It's the family. It's the longevity of it. And being able to bring those two things together, I find, like I said, being in Vancouver, like it's a lot of people's way of thinking.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, Lord, you got to give me another way, another language, another, how. Lord, give me the wisdom now so that I'll be able to, we'll be able to continue this longer communication, longer relationship.
It's so important, and again, talking about communication, where if somebody has an agenda or an expectation that this is going to happen, and someone else comes in and they have an expectation that this is going to happen, you're just going to totally miss each other. You're not going to connect at all, and you're going to go, well, we were talking about different things, and it's just going to be frustrating all the time.
Because in coming with the family, right, my expectation, yours is the work, is just kind of like, okay, we've totally missed each other's. So to me, nothing has been accomplished. And maybe for you, some things have been accomplished. But for you to leave out your family, where my heart is just like, oh my gosh, where's your heart?
Yeah.
Because that's what's important to me. Not realizing that, for your heart, it's the work.
Right.
It's like, okay. So slowly coming to that realization and understanding that, if I talk about this, we'll be able to get to that. Maybe not always the case, but I'm coming to that place of understanding, like, okay, I have to come to a place of asking God to help me, because I know how to work. I know the business. I know how it works, and the agendas and expectations, deadlines. I understand those things, but that's not always the forefront.
Right. Well, I repent of any time that I've brought those false expectations towards you and wrong agendas, because that's not right. And it wasn't good communication, because it wasn't good relationship building for the long haul. And I thank you for your ongoing patience with me and grace for your friendship. And I appreciate how every time we meet, you are always asking about my family, going, how are they doing? And that's how you pray for me a lot. So, so I said at the beginning, we are learning from each other. And I think that's so important that we hear, and we'll end with that we hear how important it is to have people around the table and to start going, let's put our agendas and our expectations aside. Let's ask who's not at the table. Why are they not at the table? Are they not comfortable? Are they not invited? Are they not welcome? Because there's going to be so much that we learn from each other and how we grow for one another. So thank you so much. And hopefully this was of benefit to you. Again, I think we'll probably do this about 10 or 20 more times. Just I think these are important conversations. But bless you as you go. Amen.
Amen. Should there also be